Malt extract agar is incredibly easy. All it is a combination of a carbohydrate, which acts as your energy source for your mycelium. I'm going to use dry malt extract, which is 2 lava bond. The lower the lava bond value, the greater the clarity will be in suspension. Malt is used for brewing, and the lighter Brice 2 lava bond malt will produce a liquid of greater clarity. Clear agar is not absolutely essential, however, it does look pretty swanky, and it can aid in the detection of contaminants growing in your plates, so I like it to be clear. I'm going to be making the standard 2% recipe, so for 400 milliliters, that will be 8 grams of malt and 8 grams of agar powder. 8 grams of malt. You can see it all sinking to the bottom, slightly hydrophobic. Now 8 grams of agar powder. That made a bit of a mess, no big deal. Now, you can see it all floating on the top there. It's a little bit more hydrophobic than the malt was. That's okay. Put your lid on. Shake the living fuck out of it for a second, and that's all it takes. Now, you can see clumps swirling around in there. A lot of people like to put their agar on the stove and pre-boil it to dissolve all of the solids in here, but that's not necessary. You can do that if you like, but I'm just going to back this off, put a foil cap on it, and run it in the pressure cooker. Now, the pressure cooker is going to get up to 121 degrees Celsius for 45 minutes, which is going to dissolve all of the powders in here, and the result is going to be crystal clear agar. Notice how all of the solids have settled to the bottom after only a few seconds after shaking. That's fine. You don't even have to shake it prior to putting in the pressure cooker. As always, put your spacers to elevate your media and your trivet. For such a short cycle, I only use a couple quarts of water. Double check that your lid's backed off a little bit. Grab one of your foil caps you used for grain jars, put that on top. Ready to go. Put it in your PC. Now, as always, the foil cap isn't 100% necessary, but it's nice to have as a sterile barrier. It's important to note that, well, this guy seems to like eating agar powder, so anyways, it's important to note that there's no requirement to fill your pressure cooker with water up to the level of the agar liquid in your vessel. Just allow the pressure cooker to naturally drop to zero without popping the vent tube or anything like that. You won't have any issues with boil over. Fire your lid on. Make sure that your jiggle weight is off. Turn on your heat source. Make sure that the water inside is boiling sufficiently before you start your purge or vent cycle time. That coincides with the overpressure valve popping up along with the lid lock. Then you know that you're evacuating the internal trap gases and replacing it with steam. Once the 10 to 15 minute timer is up, add your jiggle weight. While you're waiting for everything to boil inside, you might notice that your lid lock is sputtering. That's perfectly normal. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I might need to tighten it, but that's about it. Right, so both of my valves have just popped up, and you can hear steam and all of the trap pockets of gas kind of sputtering out of the tube. Now it's time to set your timer and keep this going for the next 10 to 15 minutes. 15 minutes is up. Apply the jiggle weight. Allow it to climb to 15 psi and then set your timer for 45 minutes. Timer is up. Turn off your heat and allow the gauge to come to zero before opening the lid. Definitely make sure not to take the jiggle weight off prior to the gauge reaching zero, or else you risk boil over. The dial has reached zero. Pull off the weight, Now you're going to want to use a heat-resistant glove to take the lid off and grab out your agar vessel, because it's going to be so hot that it'll probably remove your fingerprints. As you can see, there's no issue with boil over. Just simply tighten this down a little bit so you can remove it. Place inflow or in your still air box and allow to cool. Of course, making sure to back the lid back off again. Now it's time to allow this to cool down to the point where it is still hot. You can see it's kind of boiling in there slightly still. You don't want to touch this when it's still very hot, obviously. So the way I do it is I just keep checking it after, say, about 20 minutes or so. I'll check it to see how hot it is. If it's still pretty hot, but not so hot it's going to melt my fingers off, that's when I begin to pour. Once poured, you can see that the result is pretty clear agar. Now, if you're interested in how I pour and how I wrap plates, you can reference one of my other videos. I have that elsewhere on my YouTube channel. It may also be important to note that you don't need to use fancy media bottles. You can use anything with a narrow neck that's glass, or even polypropylene. So an appropriately sized whiskey bottle or some other narrow necked bottle will work just fine.